An early look at the waiver wire for Fantasy Week 14. What's going on? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Express. Jamie's got his waiver wire notes ready to go. All right, who's the headliner on the Week 14 waiver wire?
I think it has to be Mike Evans, 45% rostered. There was a report over the weekend from the NFL Network from Ian Rappaport that he could play as early as this week. Todd Bowles did not rule it out when he spoke on Monday. And so you would think for a player who's on injured reserve that he would be rostered in more leagues because of IR spots. But 45%, I mean, that's a must-add player to me. We know what Mike Evans is capable of when he's healthy. So he's the headliner for sure. Receiver is probably the place where you can find some potential, I don't want to say league winners, but certainly some potential starters. Once you get past Evans, you got to keep an eye on Greg Dortch now because of what he did in the 2 games without Marvin Harrison. Harrison dealing with a heel injury. So Dortch has the potential to step back in as at least a starter in 3 receiver leagues. I think you got to keep an eye on the Detroit situation because of St. Brown being out. But right now I'm going to lean toward Isaac Tesla. But Khalif Raymond could return, and that's someone to keep an eye on. He did not play in the Thanksgiving Day game, so we'll see what happens there. But Tesla, to me, has the most upside. And then you have these young receivers who have been playing very well in the case of Jaden Higgins, or guys that popped this past weekend in Adonai Mitchell and Devon Vele, both guys coming off huge games. Mitchell against the Jets, Vele against the Dolphins. Mitchell gets the Dolphins this week, and he's gotten a good target share since coming over in the trade from the Colts. And Vele, since the trade from Shaheed going to Seattle, has also been heavily involved for New Orleans. Jaden Reed's available in over 50% of leagues. He may return for the Packers. And, I know I've been banging this drum. It's been on a low end scale, but Andre Yoshevas may get another game without T. Higgins. And we know with Joe Burrow back, he scored a touchdown last week. So something to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, and if you're going, well, why would I want to pick up Mike Evans? He wasn't really that good the first 3 weeks. He faced some very difficult cornerbacks. A.J. Terrell in week 1, Derek Stingley in week 2, Sauce Gardner in week 3, caught his touchdown against the Jets in a play where he was not lined up against Sauce Gardner. So it was a little bit deceiving, I think. He scored 10.1 to 13.3 PPR fantasy points in those games, and then he got hurt pretty early in the Detroit game. But I probably shouldn't expect him to be amazing. Obviously, they have Ibuka. Godwin's back. We'll see about McMillan at some point. Offense hasn't really been humming. But yeah, I would pick him up in a second, Mike Evans. And we got Jordan Mason as a running back. He is 72% rostered. But anyone else?
The running backs, the more interesting guys are in the shallow league. So, we'll talk about this more on Tuesday's show. But you have Jordan Mason at 72%. I think you obviously have to pick up, even though he's on a bye, Chuba Hubbard, 73%. Zonovan Knight, we don't know at this point when Trey Benson's coming back. He's just above the threshold at 67% for Knight. And then you have Tyler Algier just continues to find the end zone. Bashal Tutin may continue to get a prominent role for the Jaguars. And Devin Neal, 72%. We don't know when Alvin Kamara's coming back. So those running backs are interesting. Really, outside of that, it's Chris Rodriguez, scored another touchdown against the Broncos. You kind of know what you're getting with him. Not going to be involved in the passing game. And if they get close to the end zone, he's probably going to get a chance to score. But 46% rostered. As we'll talk about tomorrow, I have a list of just, we're getting to the fantasy playoffs. Pick up handcuffs at this point. Blake Corum showed you what he can do if given a feature, or you get an idea of what Blake Corum could do if in a featured role, 39% rostered. Julian McLaughlin is the second guy in Denver at this point, 35% rostered. Michael Carter and Tyjae Spears are kind of, desperation flex plays at this point. Carter, 8.8 PPR points each of his last 2 games, 8.8 PPR or more each of his last 2 games. Tyjae Spears is kind of just lives in that 7 to 9 PPR point range. But Brian Robinson, Ray Davis, Keaton Mitchell, Samaje Perine, why would you not just stash these guys just in case something happens to the starter in front of them? They could be absolute stars.
All right, we got quarterbacks, tight ends, DSTs to tell you about when we come back on Fantasy Football Today Express. Okay, quarterbacks to add for week 14. And I should have said, but we have 4 teams on bye. We have the Giants, the Patriots, the 49ers, and the Panthers.
Yeah, so if you thought quarterback was great last week when we talked about it, wait till you see this list. So there is a chance Jaden Daniels does return this week, but I still have Marcus Mariota at the top. I mean, clearly what he's done when he's gotten a chance to start, I thought he played great against the Broncos given the defense he was facing. 28% rostered, not an easy matchup against Minnesota, but I mean, he does just so much with his legs, and getting Terry McLaurin back, that passing game looked much better, certainly against Denver. So if Mariota starts again, he'd be a borderline starter. And then the list gets really fun. I have Tyrod Taylor next, taking on the Dolphins. They just gave up over 20 fantasy points to Tyler Shuck. Taylor's coming off a game where he threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, so maybe he gets that 18-point per 18-point game, 18-point range. Why do I screw that up? 18-point range for him against Miami. I have Tyler Shuck next. He's coming off. He's got 2 games in his last 3 over 21 fantasy points, taking on the Bucks this week. So maybe he gets in that similar range. Tua has been miserable, but the Jets are the Jets, and he could obviously have a 2-touchdown game at some point. So he's next, and then just for the super flex and 2 QB audience, Trey Lance in case Justin Herbert does not start. Lance would be the starter there. You're not somebody you want to consider a must-start guy by any stretch, but clearly could help you in a desperate situation.
Man, I wish Tua were playing well because he's got Jets. They're 20th against quarterbacks. At Pittsburgh, they're 25th, although I think the cold weather is usually a problem for Tua. So keep that in mind. 2 games at the Jets and at Pittsburgh. Then Cincinnati and Tampa Bay at home to finish things off. They're 28th and 27th against quarterbacks. Tight ends.
Tight end's actually pretty good. So you got Brenton Strange. I think he belongs in the driver's seat of the list. But you can certainly make an argument for Dalton Schultz ahead of him or Harold Fanning ahead of them. All 3 guys are in the range that we talk about. Strange coming off another solid game. It wasn't a lot of targets, 3 catches, scored a touchdown though. He's now been 10 or more PPR points in his last 4 healthy games. So with the way this offense is using him, I think he's worth trusting as a starting option. Schultz, another strong game in PPR. Not an easy matchup, obviously, in week 14 at Kansas City, but hard to overlook what his usage has been and his production has been in every game except Buffalo. Excuse me. And then for Fannin, great to see him find the end zone, and Shadur Sanders, leaning on him. His route participation, I saw somebody posted this, 90%. Yeah. So something that you can, sorry, I'm losing my voice. Harold Fannin, is just, I think, the safest pass catcher for the Browns. And then 2 veterans that we've kind of written off coming off strong games. Evan Ingram was great against Washington, and, good matchup for him this week. And then in the case of TJ Hawkinson, I know it was against Seattle, but now he gets Washington, and Washington has been miserable against tight ends this season as well. So depending on who starts for the Vikings, keep an eye on that. But Hawkinson worth a look. And then Isaiah Likely, and I have Isaiah Likely, Gunnar Helm, and Colby Parkinson more for deeper leagues. Likely got the Bengals bump, but we'll see if that carries over. Their schedule against tight ends is great, starting with Pittsburgh. Helm has 6 catches each of his last 2 weeks, so clearly being more involved in the Titans offense. And Colby Parkinson had another game with 4 catches. He did nothing with it, 20-some-odd yards, but did score a touchdown in 3 straight games. So deeper leagues, you could find some potential help there, but tight end is actually pretty good.
All right, we're going to finish it off with the DSTs.
Yeah, so DSTs, you got the Bucks, they get the Saints, you got the Commanders, depending on how much you want to trust them and who the quarterback is from Minnesota, but Minnesota's terrible. And then the Chiefs taking on the Texans. You know how the Texans sometimes operate offensively, and they're going to be back at home for Kansas City. Kickers got Evan McPherson. He scored, depending on your league, 36 fantasy points in his last 2 games. So he's been great for from a production standpoint. Not ideal going at Buffalo. We'll see what the weather is there, but he was just in Baltimore. Harrison Mevis, I forget how to pronounce his last name. The kicker for the Rams. He's their guy for the foreseeable future. They cut Josh Carty, so looks like he's going to be their kicker for the rest of the season at Arizona. And then Riley Patterson's coming off a game where he just made 4 field goals, taking on the Jets. I know, again, elements could be an issue there, but did just have 4 field goals against the Saints.
How about team name? Mevis and Butker.
Not bad.
By the way, did you mention the Dolphins DST?
I did not.
They're hot. They're hot.
I should put them there, yeah.
Yeah, they've got the 3 straight good games in a row. They're getting some pressure. 3 straight games with a pick. They're facing the Jets.
I don't think Tyrod turns it over very much, though.
Right, that's the thing. He has kind of this year, I think, but typically his history is to not turn the ball over. But all right, thank you, Jamie. We'll talk to you tomorrow with a longer look at the waiver wire on Fantasy Football Today. See ya.